What do we want? Retirement. When do we want it? Now. In all seriousness, now might not be a great time to retire. In fact, it might be a terrible time to retire if you haven't planned for it. Save yourself some trouble. Do the plan before you retire. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things that you've got to consider before you pull the trigger on your retirement. I'm Antonio Cibella. Welcome to our video today. Today we're going to talk about the 3 things that you've got to do before you retire. So let's dive right into it. The first thing, pay off your debts. Live low to the ground. Don't go into retirement with a lot of expenses. Even if you can afford it, having a substantial mortgage, a boat payment, 3 car payments, a second home, all of that cool stuff, it can add stress even if you've got the money to pay for it. Look into reducing those payments. Keep your expenses as low as possible going into retirement. It'll allow you more flexibility. Now, I know that retirement is a time for fun, right? You've worked your whole life, you've saved, you want to enjoy yourself. So nobody wants to retire and then sit around the house and just eat ramen noodles. Unless you really want to just sit around and eat ramen noodles and that's what you've been planning for retirement. But if that's not the case, you've got to make sure that you're able to do the things that you want to do. And the way to be able to do that is having very low expenses by paying down or paying off debts prior to getting to retirement. The second thing you've got to do when coming into retirement is get a handle on your expenses and your income and how that's going to change going into retirement, right? So you've got some expenses that you have right now if you're still working that you're not going to have once you retire. You're not going to have the payroll taxes. You're not going to pay the same amount maybe for health insurance or commuting costs. Any money that you're currently funding into retirement accounts, your 401k and things like that at work, you're going to stop doing that when you retire. And so that's an expense, if you will, that will go away. You're not going to necessarily need the same level of income. By the same token, you may have some new expenses coming. What's your healthcare cost look like? Do you have Medicare supplements that you've got to pay for? Do you have any additional large expenses on the horizon or bills that are going to come up because of choices that you've made in retirement? So you got to get a handle on what your expenses are likely to be after you retire, before you retire. The third thing you've got to do as you get ready to retire is map it out. See what it looks like. Look at your best case scenario, your worst case scenario, and the likely scenario, your base case scenario, and see what all of those mean. There's an old joke about a 2-part plan, right? 2-part plan. Part number 1, show up. Part number 2, see what happens. Here's a pro tip. Don't do that with your retirement. That's a bad plan. Figure out what could go wrong going into retirement and how that might affect your retirement. What if there's more market volatility? What if there's a market crash right before or right after you retire? How will that impact you? Will you have the ability to stay retired if something like that happens? What if inflation goes up? These are all concerns and things that could happen that you need to be aware of and be aware of how that might impact your retirement. Now, you may be in a circumstance or a situation where you say, I could weather a lot of those things and still live the comfortable retirement that I want. If so, great. You're probably ready to retire. You're in good shape. If that's not the case, you've got to start to look at what changes you can make now to get yourself there so that you do it right. You only retire once. Nobody wants to retire and then something happens that they didn't plan for that causes them to need to go back to work or to drastically change their lifestyle in retirement. So do the work before you get there. Find those things out. That brings me to the only takeaway for today. If you need some help with this, if this is just not your wheelhouse, right? Some people love this stuff and they can't wait to get into it by themselves, and they probably don't need somebody like me. But if that's not you and you need some help, you have some questions, give me a ring, shoot me an email, check out antoniocibella.com for more. As always, thanks for being here. I hope you learned something. I'll see you soon.